Cleveland police have agreed to overhaul their practices and accept the supervision of a federal monitor in a settlement with the Justice Department announced today. The DOJ says it found a pattern of unconstitutional policing and excessive use of force among Cleveland officers. This just days after a judge acquitted a Cleveland police officer of manslaughter charges for his role in the 2012 shooting death of 2 unarmed black men. That decision sparked protests, which led to 71 arrests over the weekend, and the protests continue today. Now, the head of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division spoke a short time ago. Take a listen.
The Cleveland Division of Police is going to adopt policies and train on those policies that minimize the opportunity for the use of racial or other improper stereotypes in policing, including training on cultural competency and avoiding implicit biases, because we know that it's not just explicit biases, but sometimes implicit or biases that people are unaware of that cause problems. And the city is also committing to collect and analyze data on all its stops, searches, and seizures.
Well, earlier I spoke to Justice reporter Paula Reid about the DOJ's announcement.
So about 2 years ago, the Department of Justice began investigating the Cleveland Police Department after a series of high-profile incidents where the police appeared to use excessive or unnecessary force. Now, in December, then Attorney General Eric Holder came out with his report detailing just how bad the problem was. They said these officers were using unconstitutional policing practices. They were very quick to resort to punches, to using stun guns, to resorting to chemical sprays, and that the disciplinary process within the police department was just not adequately overseeing this, nor was it responding to the problem. So the Department of Justice had to step in. Over the past several months, the Department of Justice has been working with the community to come up with some agreed upon ways to reform these practices. So today's consent decree, this agreement was the product of all of these discussions and negotiations. They will bring this before a judge so that if Cleveland does not follow through on its promises to implement these reforms, the judge can force them to implement these reforms.
So, Paula, so a lot of this is something that I think is going to have an impact across the country for many other police departments, because generally in the past, police departments have been resistant to this kind of oversight. Is it in the estimation of the officials on the ground that something like this, that this agreement can work, and how exactly is it implemented?
Absolutely. It seems that Cleveland has been very cooperative. Even when the Department of Justice came out and announced its findings, they had already agreed to a list of principles and different ways that they agreed that they could work to reform the police department. We didn't see that in a city like Ferguson. But it seems Cleveland wants to hold themselves out as an example of how a police department can reform itself. Now, going forward, as you heard them say, the police are going to be trained in ways to de-escalate situations. They will also told that they cannot use force for anyone who talks back or simply runs away. They're really going to try to retrain these officers in the way that they use force. Additionally, they're going to change the way that this is overseen. If there is any use of force incident, that will be investigated the same way that they investigate a crime. It's a very exacting standard, especially compared to the way that that is overseen in other police departments. Furthermore, Cleveland has agreed to collect data on all use of force incidents. Now, in the wake of Ferguson and Baltimore and other cities where there's been tension between the community and police, there's been a lot of criticism about the fact that that kind of data is not mandatory. We don't have numbers on how many times police use force against civilians. So it appears that Cleveland really wants to change their ways and serve as a model for police departments across the country.
Paula, before I let you go, let's talk about timing here. Officer Michael Brello was found not guilty of voluntary manslaughter and felonious assault in the wake of that 2012 essentially shooting of Timothy Russell and Melissa Williams. This is that incident where Officer Brello was alleged to have fired multiple shots into the car that those occupants were sitting in, and he was just found not guilty of those charges this weekend. Does this timing have anything to do, the timing of this announcement have anything to do with that verdict, in a way perhaps to calm tensions in Cleveland?
It's possible. It's hard to choreograph these things too closely, but the two parties have been working together over the past several months. And if this agreement was close to being closed, both parties, the Department of Justice and the City of Cleveland, had an incentive to come out with the announcement today. We saw the same thing happen in Ferguson. While the Department of Justice and the justice system generally couldn't bring any recourse against Officer Wilson, the Department of Justice announced at the same time as it announced it was not opening a case against the officer that it was engaging in this pattern and practice investigation. So for some some people who believe there is a discord between the community and police, even if an individual officer cannot be held accountable. The fact that the Department of Justice is coming in to reform the whole police department, that's a consolation to some.
Paula Reid breaking it down for us. Thank you so much, Paula. Appreciate it.